Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Green Room. We are here live on DisrupTV. More importantly, here with my amazing co-host, Vala Afshar, our producer, Elle, and more importantly, our two great guests. We'll introduce them real quickly. We do it reverse order every time. We'll go with Joe. Joe, where are you coming in from? And what are we talking about today?
I'm in Atlanta, Midtown, at BCG's offices in the middle of Atlanta, Peachtree Street, as you said. And we're going to talk about leadership.
I was just kidding, actually.
Oh, no, you were right. Of course, that's where the office is. Talk about leadership and a generous leader, which we can talk about. I can describe.
Sure. Wow, we're looking forward to that and going deep on that. Caroline, where are you coming in from and what are we talking about?
Portland, Oregon. And today we're talking about Cobalt's 6th annual State of Pen Testing Report.
Ooh, awesome. It's going to be very interesting. Well, thank you very much. And we'll kick it off. So, all right, we'll turn it back to Elle. And once we get from the green room, we're going to give each guest about 25 minutes. This is a special double header, and we'll go in deep. So, all yours, Elle.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Our past guests are so cool, we have to show that twice. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to join us on X and follow us at DisrupTV Show. Send us your questions live. We'll do our best to answer them in the next hour. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wong. He's the CEO, founder of Constellation Research. He is the best-selling author of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I saw him signing 500 copies of this book just this week. I see Ray on TV every day, Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, Bloomberg, CNBC. In my humble opinion, he's one of the top futures to follow on X at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wong, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm here with my amazing co-host, Vala Afshar, the Chief Evangelist for Salesforce, and he's also the author of multiple books, including Boundless, A New Mindset for Unlimited Business Success, and a #1 bestseller on Amazon. But it's not about that. We've got executives around the world. They pay attention to every one of his inspirational and insightful tweets. And when he's not hosting, keynoting, or leading events at Salesforce, you can find him speaking on business TV outlets such as Bloomberg and posting insightful analyses on ZDNet. Now we've got amazing guests. And Vala, who do we have to kick it off today?
It's our privilege to have Caroline Wong, who's the Chief Strategy Officer at Cobalt. Cobalt was founded on the belief that security testing can be better. Cobalt pioneered pen test as a service, PTAS, by pairing SaaS platforms with an exclusive community of highly vetted security experts to disrupt the old school way of testing. Today, over 1,300 customers, all sizes, from startups to large enterprises, use Cobalt to run applications and network pen testing, code reviews, risk assessments, red team exercises, and much more. As CISO, Caroline leads the security community and people teams at Cobalt. Caroline brings a proven background in communication, cybersecurity, and experience delivering global programs to the role. Caroline's close and practical information security knowledge stems from her broad experience as Citadel consultant, semantic product manager, and day-to-day leadership roles at eBay and Zynga. Caroline also hosts the Humans of InfoSec podcast. Love having other podcasters on the show. Teaches cybersecurity courses on LinkedIn Learning and has authored the popular textbook Security Metrics, A Beginner's Guide. Welcome, Caroline, to Disrupt TV.
Thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure to have you.
We're excited to have you here. Nothing could be hotter than talking about cybersecurity post RSAC, since that's what they want to tell us call it. And as you know the joke. But anyways, part of it is like talking about pen testing, right? And penetration testing is one of the biggest areas where people are trying to figure out vulnerabilities, what's happening in the marketplace. It's been around for quite some time. You just recently put out a state of pen testing report. What interesting insights have you discovered, especially given the changes with an age of AI?
So I'd love to start out by explaining the methodology that we use for our state of pen testing report. To date, Cobalt has delivered nearly 15,000 manual pen tests over time. And every year for the past 6 years, we look at the data from the pen tests we did in the previous year, and we publish all sorts of information and analysis about it. In this year's 2024 report, we're actually looking at more than 4,000 manual pen test engagements performed in 2023, resulting in more than 39,000 found security vulnerabilities. And perhaps it's no surprise that we've seen an explosion in the number of pen tests that our customers are asking us to perform on AI systems.
So something that must be fairly new in your annual report is the impact of AI and implementation of AI in businesses. I thought I saw in the report that 7 out of 10 respondents said that they're finding new vulnerabilities as a result of greater AI solutions adopted in business. Can you talk a little bit about the AI findings in your annual report?
Sure. So right now we've got an industry group called OWASP. OWASP is very well known for their OWASP Top 10, which is a list of the top 10 web application security vulnerabilities. This list was started in 2003, and every few years, the OWASP community actually makes a data-driven updated list. So our most recent version of the OWASP Top 10 actually comes to us from 2021. This year in 2024, we're actually expecting to get a new OWASP Top 10 in September. Now, separate from that, but related, is our OWASP Top 10 for LLMs. And right now, there is a draft of this guidance out. There's some very smart people working on putting this together. But as you may imagine, because AI is relatively new and relatively emerging, this particular top 10 is more about smart people coming together and saying, what do we think is going to happen? There is relatively little actual practical data. But what Cobalt has and what we're providing visibly to the world via our State of Pen Testing report is we've conducted real-life pen tests on AI systems and LLMs, and we're delighted to be able to share some of that information with the world. Specifically, the top 3 vulnerability types that we're actually seeing in practice are, number 1, prompt injection, number 2, denial of service, and number 3, sensitive data exposure.
Wow. Prompt injection and sensitive data leakage. Is that the
That's
last piece?
right. That's right. As well as denial of service. I think one of the things that we're learning about AI and LLM systems is the massive amount of storage and compute power that's really required to make these things work. We're actually discovering that there's a security vulnerability involved in a bad actor being able to exploit those storage and computing requirements and effectively take an AI system down and DOS it, make it unavailable to its legitimate users.
Yeah, that's a huge issue, and we're seeing that. I mean, look, either way, injection is going to be a huge issue going forward, and really in the design. And one of the reasons this is really important is with AI, we're worried about having bad data being put into your systems, right? And that's a massive vulnerability where your data sources are no longer pure, or data sources no longer secure, or those are data sources that were in your place. Can you elaborate on the significance of prompt injection and model denial of service and prompt leaking vulnerabilities in AI systems, right? Like that. Why? Like where people can stop that? Because I would bet you like 9 to 10 folks, organizations don't even know where their data is coming from or the data validity of what's happening.
Since the dawn of computing, we know that the data that you get out of a system is only as good as the data that you're putting into a system. In more traditional computing, we've got data in databases. And similarly, there are application security vulnerabilities related to SQL injection, any number of database type injection, whereby if a bad person can change the data in the database, that's a problem. I think that these days, it's so common. I actually was telling my kids, I've got elementary school age kids, and I told them, any question that you have that you would normally type into Google in order to get some data and formulate an answer, start typing that into AI, because I really want my kids to learn about how to use AI. I want them to become expert prompt engineers. And what better way to do that than to start them when they're in elementary school? But that being said, I've been working in cybersecurity since 2005. And so my kids understand that when you type a search into Google, the information that comes back is not necessarily the truth. It's not necessarily objective fact. I think that, we as a world are going to get into this place where when we're asking questions of AI, certainly technologists, engineers, cybersecurity folks understand very plainly that the data coming out of the AI has everything to do with the data being put into the AI. But for sort of your non-technologist, your non-cybersecurity person, my mother-in-law, for example, she puts a prompt into an AI system, and there may be a common misunderstanding amongst the general public that the AI is telling the truth or the facts, when truly we understand that that's not necessarily the case.
One of the interesting aspects of the Cobalt report was how much pressure the C-suite are facing today in terms of accountability, in terms of liability. Security is a boardroom discussion, especially when things go in the wrong direction. In the report, the C-suite said 31% feel more pressure than non-C-suite in terms of mental health, and 51% said more pressure physically in terms of the awesome amount of responsibility that they have to ensure accountability and liability. And I think for me, it explains why the pen testing is far more significant in your current report as compared to your previous reports. So my sense is the C-suite now, they have skin in the game and they want to make sure that security is top of mind for the company. Can you talk about what other reasons in terms of why pen testing has such a higher increase year over year?
Sure. So first, I want to address this topic of burnout and kind of what the experience is like for an information security professional these days. It's sort of never easy to be a cybersecurity person. The common thing that people talk about is, you're in the spotlight when something bad goes wrong. But when things are fine, you're just sort of in the background doing things. And there's a little bit of truth to that. I think that for information security professionals to get in the game and really stay in the game requires an enormous amount of sort of emotional and mental, and to some extent, even physical resilience. these days, security professionals are encountering all sorts of changes to their attack landscape. The threats are changing. The introduction of AI happens to be one of the biggest things, one of the fastest moving things. And this is in addition to continued use of cloud, continued use of open source, and so for security professionals in the C-suite, they're also looking at, what are happening to folks like Joe Sullivan? What are happening to folks like Tim Brown? It seems like we've got a Microsoft person who's about to testify about some of these breaches. And so certainly it's top of mind for regulatory agencies like the SEC. It's top of mind for boards. And this just puts extra scrutiny, extra pressure on folks who kind of have a hard job to do in the first place. What pen testing can really provide is visibility and data. Pen testing provides a little bit of a lens into what is the attacker mindset? What does this look like from an offensive security perspective? If a bad person is looking at my application, my network, my IoT device, my AI software, how does that person really see this? And can I get information on where my security vulnerabilities lie so that hopefully I can work with our technology teams to get those fixed before a bad person can exploit them?
Well,
And Caroline, how do you? Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, it's always the human, but now it's going to be the machine, right? So it's going to be the interesting shift, right? As we go from humans to machine. But hey, sorry, go back, Val. I think you were asking something.
No, when you identify nearly 40,000 new vulnerabilities, I mean, how do you prioritize? I mean, I've heard of this notion of the red teams identify, the blue teams are trying to address anomalies, and there's so much prioritization and intense spirited discussions that happen. You almost need a purple team that prioritizes what has the biggest impact for us, because it's impossible to address all the vulnerabilities at the same time. So it just feels like incredible amount of intense work, prioritization, focus, and continuous in nature. There's no finish line. There's no, you're not driving towards a particular mile marker. You're just continuously trying to address these issues. So I definitely understand. Not a space I would want to be. I don't think I'm mentally or physically, I'm old now, able to do this.
Well, you've got an extremely good point, and the classic way to look at any particular security vulnerability is to look at kind of what's the impact of something bad happening and what's the likelihood of that vulnerability being exploited. And the way that our pen testers work with our clients, we're really trying to understand, take a software application, for example. How is that software application supposed to work? What is the business logic involved? What may some other security mitigating controls be? And therefore, it's assigned a criticality rating. So this ranges from critical or high to medium, low, and informational. And I think that given the state of reality, frankly, which is to say that we certainly don't have infinite resources to spend on security, we've got limited time and resources. The reality is that organizations tend to address those critical severity and high severity findings. Whatever happens to the medium, low, and informational findings, a lot of times those are really pushed off to the side, and those don't necessarily get remediated right away, if at all. So there's always going to be some level of unmitigated risk in a situation like that.
Sure.
Caroline, I'm here in Las Vegas. We've got a number of CIOs here in healthcare. And healthcare has been probably one of the most interesting areas in terms of ransomware attacks. Probably broken access control, prompt injection, other kind of vulnerabilities that have been here. And a number of them mentioned to us that they're at a point where they believe, and their insurance carriers have told them, there may not be any cybersecurity insurance in 3 years. Is that something that you think is going to happen? Are we going to get better at this in terms of actually being able to protect ourselves? Or is that really going to be a market where people are going to be on their own?
What a fun question. I don't think insurance is going anywhere. Insurance providers like to make their money, and we're getting more and more information that the insurance providers can use to determine what appropriate rates are. That being said, I do sympathize with healthcare professionals, information security professionals working at healthcare organizations. They have certainly been one of the big targets of ransomware. And I think that, in some ways, some of the different motivations are a little bit funny in this space. And let me tell you what I mean by that. The thing that irks me about ransomware is that ransomware is not new. If you two will indulge me for a moment, I wonder if you would hazard a guess as to when was the very first ransomware attack?
The very first.
Very first ransomware attack. Give me a year. Guess the year. Guess the decade. Oh, maybe I've given.
Oh, wow.
2002.
1980.
All right, Ray.
Before the web. Before the web.
1989.
Wow.
1989. Yep.
A Trojan horse. Trojan horse. There was a Trojan horse attack. Yeah, early. Wow. Yeah, 89. So,
you know what? In 1989, a hacker went to a conference and threw a bunch of floppy disks on the floor. And when people picked up those floppy disks and they put them into the computers, they owned the computers, and it said, snail mail me $150 to this snail mail address at a P.O. box in Panama. No joke. And you know what? It's 2024. Ransomware is happening. And the thing that is so wild to me is it's not hard to prevent. Literally, if you have backup systems in place, if you're looking for security vulnerabilities, if you're fixing those security vulnerabilities, if you're keeping your software up to date, you will be immune to ransomware. Now, I don't want to underestimate the effort that is required. I also don't want to underestimate how boring that work is. You go and you talk to Ray, you're in Las Vegas right now. Go and talk to those CIOs. And if you say to them, hey, what's your top priority for 2024? I bet they're not going to say testing our data backups to make sure they work. How boring is that? How low of a priority thing does that sound? No.
Actually, they are backed up every 15 minutes. We ask them. So they're backed up every 15 minutes so they can just shut everyone off and come back online. Wow. You
got a group of elite CIOs.
These are some of the elite CIOs that are in this room here. So
oh my gosh, that is just music to my ears. You made my day.
Caroline wants an invitation to the next summit you have, Ray, so she can meet these CIOs and thank them.
I need to meet these people in the flesh. I'm not sure.
That's right.
They're really bots. We're lying to you. It's not even true.
So given that our research shows that AI is the number one priority for most CEOs, the boss of the CIOs, and in fact, more CIOs are now reporting to CEOs, 64% versus 51% according to IDC. This year versus last year, last 12 months versus prior. What advice do you have for these C-suite executives who want to have Gen AI in sales and service and marketing and commerce and R&D? What should they be doing differently today as compared to maybe 2-3 years ago when AI was not such an important priority for them?
Sure. Thing number one, you've got to take a stance. And I think that broadly speaking, your stances can be one of two options. Option one, we're scared of AI. We hate AI. You are not allowed to use AI. That is not my recommended option, but it is an option. Option number two, we're going to embrace AI. We're going to recognize that it's coming, and we're just going to take it one step at a time. Now, I think that the most common risk for organizations is their employees are going to use AI, whether you allow them to or not.
Totally.
And what you don't want is you do not want your employees, you do not want your developers taking your company's source code and putting them into any sort of public AI, effectively spraying your confidential and sensitive data all over who knows where exactly. So look for safe ways. One of the things that we're doing at Cobalt, for example, is for our staff, we have a closed and exclusive AI that we use internally. And so if folks want to run through marketing content, if folks want to run through ideas, then they can do that. And we can be assured that that information is not just going who knows where. The other thing is, to the extent that folks are using AI, make sure you're engaging with security professionals to test that appropriately. Just like anything else, if there are big, bad, critical security vulnerabilities, you want to find them before the bad people can exploit it.
No, definitely a great point. We're seeing that. Got a great comment here. Ian Gertler here saying this is foundational. It has to be by design. It's not supposed to be an afterthought, right? And it's really about, reducing surface area, reducing their blast radius, right? And of course, bad actors. So definitely be present, careful. We definitely see that. Real quick before we end, any advice on what we can do to reduce attack surfaces? First one, and then the second question is really about post-breach. You're not going to be breached. It's just that people do in post-breach. You guys catch it on the pen test. What do you get on the back end? Because if you know you're going to be breached anyways, you should have an action plan. So what's your advice there?
Here it is. Conduct a digital risk assessment. What is a digital risk assessment? A digital risk assessment involves using OSINT techniques, open source intelligence techniques. Yep. When a breach happens, your data goes who knows where. An OSINT exercise, a digital risk assessment, essentially employs technical security people to say, go and tell me what data of mine, what data of my organization's is just out there so that I can go fix it. So that's my piece of advice. We've got a Frost and Sullivan report that we did on digital risk assessment that I'd encourage folks to go to, and certainly don't hesitate to check out 2024 State of Pen Testing, Cobalt's 6th annual. We are so excited to be a really data-driven company, and very excited to share that data as well as our analysis with the industry.
That's awesome.
Well, hey, thank you so much. With Caroline Wong, Chief Strategy Officer at Cobalt. As you would expect, she has no X or Twitter account. You'll have to try to find her. So anyways, see you at Black
Thank you, Caroline.
somewhere here in August next year, this summer. Anyways, thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Happy Friday.
Awesome.
Wow.
So important.
We got all these CIOs sitting in the room right there, and they're all trying to figure out what's about to happen next. But
and most CIOs
leader, but
yeah, that's right. All of these CIOs want to become generous leaders. And
yeah, that was quite an intense conversation.
There we go. Joe Davis, a managing director and senior partner at the Boston Consulting Group, and the author of The Generous Leader. Joe is former head of BCG in North America and member of the firm's executive committee. Joe oversaw BCG's operations in U.S., Canada, Mexico, and has been recognized as one of the top consultants at BCG. In Joe's book, The Generous Leader, Joe reminds us that bringing your authentic self to your leadership takes courage and commitment, but you reap profound benefits from heart-led, generous acts. Joe presents 7 ways to give of yourself for everyone's gain. Welcome, Joe, to DisrupTV.
Thank you guys for having me. That was quite a nice introduction. Thank you very much.
We were trying to connect personally.
We're learning through our learning. Yeah, we're going before we even start talking. It's working.
I know. Okay, so let's talk about this generosity. How does it differ from a traditional unilateral leader? We have different types of leadership styles in the past. We have like the strong military type, right? We have like the capable type that goes out and says, "Hey, we're in this leadership." But leadership has changed. So what's the difference here, Joe?
Yeah, let me touch on that. I mean, first off, I should define what I mean by a generous leader.
Yes.
Which I basically mean one who freely gives of themselves without expectation of direct personal benefit, so others can develop, grow, and thrive at their full potential. Now, obviously, when that works really
we're talking about
selflessness, or it's about having your team perform at their top potential, which is great for you.
Got it.
Now, I was going to say, I said kind of important one thing to say, because it's not all unicorns and clouds and pretty ponies, but there are some ways there's differences, but there's some things that don't differ. And one thing I'll say is, no matter what kind of leader you are, you do have to drive positive outcomes. Numbers do matter. If anyone thinks I'm trying to argue against that, then I'd be in trouble and you won't listen to me. And it's interesting, I'll tell you, in this book, I talked to a handful of senior executives, and one fellow was Joaquin Duato, the CEO of Johnson & Johnson. And, he said something pretty powerful to me. He said, Joe, what you did, how hard you worked, how well you try and all that, that's fine, but it doesn't matter. As a leader, outcomes matter. But he also said, the sooner you understand that it's not all about you and step past yourself, listen to others, connect more fully with your teams, the sooner you'll release, and I thought it was interesting, release to be able to leverage all the human traits critical to get positive results. So, it's a still get the job done, but you're going to do it differently with your teams. So one thing, it doesn't change. You have to set vision, have a strategy, you got to set goals and targets, to plan how to get there, set metrics, etc. But as I said, you're actually seeing your teams, your people as humans, not as cogs in the organizational wheel, the old days of the IBM, what is the white shirt and blue suit, when everybody looked, remember that one commercial that was famous? Those days just don't work anymore. A leader brings, if you think of head, heart, and hand, we've all heard of that. The leader probably pushes the heart out more than it might be for most of us. They're striving for others' growth, and they know if they are actually helping others to thrive at their full potential, the whole thing's going to build on itself, and their leadership actually probably becomes generative and can spread.
Joe,
so that's what I mean by it.
There's a great level of empathy required to lead to this level of generosity and servant leadership. So how do we channel empathy so we can unlock our full potential as leaders?
Yeah. Right. It's something that I would say by definition a generous leader would do. It's also something, I think it was Kristen Peck, who's CEO of Zoetis. She had said in an interview with Alan Murray, more than 50% of our staff today are millennials. And if you put the Gen Z in there, it's well over half the staff. And they expect empathetic leaders who connect in new ways. And by empathy, some people mix up empathy, sympathy, etc. What we're really talking about is the ability to understand and be aware of and sensitive to others' feelings, their experiences, their lived experiences, basically taking their perspective. And, ways to, when you're really showing that you're empathetic to them, you're helping them to unlock what's all inside of them, because they actually understand, oh, I see you see me as a person, you see me as someone who's contributing, ideas, etc. And I think that, the most important thing to do for that is, listen. Listen to learn. Ask. I think all these executives said, what do you do? They said, I ask. I probe. You're always trying to figure out what is it that person knows that I don't know, that I need to know, or that I should know, or, will help me to, drive the change I need to drive. Yep.
Joe, is that the be curious part in the book?
Yeah.
Right? The active listening that you're looking for here?
Yeah, that's what I think of that is, really trying to understand that people have something in their head that's not in your head. And the sooner you put the two of those things together, the better off you're both going to be, you're all going to be.
Is there a way to train your team, your organization, your company, where you have the ethos that asking is more powerful than telling? So how do you create a listening culture? How do you, I think it's beyond Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours of practice, because I've been practicing listening all my life and I still think I'm a poor listener.
Help me. 10,000 hours. If you don't have it, you better, I don't know. You might be. First off, I don't believe you, but that's okay.
We've got that.
I think the most important thing to do on that is actually, you've got a role model. You just have to role model. If you're, whether this be a Zoom or in a meeting, and you say hello to a few people as the thing starts, say hello and ask something of the least senior person in the room. That sends a signal to everybody. Wow. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your pictures disappeared. I thought you said Joe. So, say something to the least senior person in the room. Engage with them. Recognize them. that's another pretty simple trick. Now you have to be humble enough to do this, but if you don't know something yourself, say that to the group and say, does anyone have any ideas? You start to unlock people if you are, showing that you're actually not sitting there with all the answers in your head, but you're exploring others. I think another technique, but I don't know if it's going to solve your problem. I've already said it, but one thing I'm a big believer in, I always tell my teams is, if you want to get something done, go find the skeptics, engage the skeptics, uncover the no's. And, most often the noologists aren't really trying to block you. They actually know something you don't know. You know what I mean? And when you figure out what it is they know that you don't know and put the two together, you actually can uncover ways to solve problems. But I think that the best way to answer your question is you've got to role model this behavior yourself. You can't pound it into somebody. And now, depending on what your jobs are, I mean, I've had people at my company, BCG, who are quite simply not very good listeners. And you can imagine they don't get promoted. They don't make it to partner. Because think about consulting. If I wasn't listening to what's in my client's mind, what they're thinking, what they really want, I mean, good luck to you, right?
Yeah.
Well, the other piece that you guys talk about is welcoming everybody, generous inclusion. We're seeing some backlash on inclusion, but we're also seeing some interest as to the right type of inclusion. So let's talk about that, because when you talk about this, you are nuanced in your conversation about that.
Yeah, no, the minute you hear the word inclusion, right, we all think, well, I shouldn't say it like that, but you immediately go to what, DE&I and diversity and all that, which is, of course, I actually believe in that, but that's not really the question you've asked. By inclusion in this case, I actually mean that
new ideas, a thought, bringing different perspectives.
Right. Yeah, I mean perspectives, people up and down the organization. Not too many leaders get their core little team, right? And all they hear is the echo chamber, and really include. I mean, a lot of these executives I talk to would often walk out in the hall and ask the least senior person in the finance department, "How's this really working? What's going on with these numbers?" Bring surprising people into the room. I mean, here's a little silly story. When I became head of North America, I was preparing for my first meeting with the worldwide officer team, and I had in the room my chief of staff, one other senior partner, my assistant, who I'm very close to, my wife, a coach I had, and then someone in logistics. And afterwards I said, "Joe, that was a hodgepodge of interesting people." I said, "Yeah, but that group's going to keep me honest. I'm not going to get full of myself. It's not going to be a bunch of, as well as people or, senior give me different ideas." So that's what I mean. What you're saying, different people across the company, up and down the company, different experiences, and of course, different lived experiences and different perspectives.
Joe, you dedicate a chapter in your book in terms of the idea that small acts as a leader could have big impact. Can you explain some examples of small acts and things that people can listen on our podcast and perhaps implement Monday when they're back in the office as leaders aspiring to be generous?
Yeah, and depending on where they're listening, they still have time this afternoon. So
I love it.
Well, so I mean, what I mean, these are, you could almost say they're simple courtesies, but I will go a little bit further than that. But they are simple courtesies. I mean, a thank you for a job well done, rather small act. A congratulations for a job well done, or someone cracking something, or winning a new lead, or selling a new account, and actually have that congratulations, maybe be an email that you copy other people, or maybe you copy your boss on it. And these are very, you hear more stories. More stories from it. But I'll tell you, also I'll tell you one story from Scott Kirby. Now, this is a small act, but actually,
United Scott Kirby.
Yeah. So Scott Kirby. Yeah. So let's put aside the Boeing stuff right now. This is not about that. But Scott told me a story, and he's quite a busy person. Someone said, "Well, how can a CEO do small acts?" When the George Floyd murder killing happened, Scott, the story started because his wife was on a plane, and the captain came out and said, "Oh, Mrs. Kirby, I'm so excited you're here and be on my flight." And she was a Black woman. And she said, "Well, why? I love your husband. What's going on?" She said, "Well, your husband, when George Floyd was murdered, called every single captain who was a person of color at United and didn't have the answers, didn't want to tell us what we should do, just wanted to know how, checked in to see how we're feeling and let them know he was thinking about them. Now, maybe, I don't know how many phone calls it was. It wasn't, a handful of phone calls or a big number maybe, but it wasn't like making a major decision or addressing what he's doing now. It was a pretty small act, but incredibly powerful across. And you can imagine if it's 200 people got a call or 100, how many also heard about the call throughout the company?
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was pretty amazing. Small acts. He's a big believer in this. He said, "Oh no, Joe, these small acts are the big acts for leadership."
And I think when there's a level of authenticity, demonstrability, and repeatability, so you demonstrate your generosity, you do it with certain cadence, where every day there's an opportunity. Hold the door a little bit longer. Remember people's names. I remember when I was young in my career, and a big executive would walk by. Typically, I'd just have my head down and as an introvert walk. But there were times where these big shots would say, "Hello, Vala," and I would hear my name. Man, you just lifted me up for the entire day.
Yep.
Because in my mind, I'm like, there's got to be a reason they know my name. And if they remember it, it must be because I've done something good. So just remembering my name was stunningly important for me. Anyway, just small.
Yeah, well, no, but that's a very, can I build on that? Because one
sure.
friend of mine at BCG said, "Joe, if I tell my boss on, let's say Thursday, here's something somebody could do. You've talked to, hey, my kid has a big soccer game this weekend. I'm very excited about it. If on Monday or Tuesday they see the boss and the boss said, how was that soccer game? That's a version of, man, she said, I am wedded to that. I'm just so excited and I'm really going to follow that leader. Now you got to remember the soccer game. You got to remember the name. That's not always easy, but if you do remember, take that. How long did that take to say your name? 2 seconds, 0 seconds,
Right.
It's actually quite powerful.
It is. It really is. We talk about collaboration being so difficult. I think it starts with 4 words. What do you think? Just ask for my opinion alone gets me excited. So I'm just realizing how much of my ego was tied to compliments. I don't know. If they knew my name and asked for my opinion, that was like getting a raise. That was like, that was a perk. I don't know.
Yeah, and you're definitely seeing that shift. I mean, in terms of like how people want to be treated or recognized or called out. And those are big shifts, right? So, but you also talk about vulnerability as well. Give up the mask is kind of the conversation point here. Are we all more vulnerable, or are we more all accepting of being more vulnerable? Where does that go?
Well, it's interesting because we're all more vulnerable. I don't know. That's a big sentence, right? But I think people are more accepting, and actually, I think more and more of the younger generation are, if they want to be perceived as a human and not just a cog in the wheel, they want to know you're human too. If they're stuck and don't know how to solve it, they want to know, oh, this person just demonstrated they didn't know how to solve it either, and share some of that vulnerability. The vulnerability doesn't have to be sobbing in front of everybody in a meeting. It can be as simple as, and it's one you just said it. But yeah, what do you think? I mean, I don't know really how to make this thing. What are your ideas? I'll tell you. So I think right, that is it's becoming more accepted. I'll tell you something funny though. Someone said to me, you don't need to push the vulnerability with the youngest generation. They really get it. They're living it. So actually, they maybe they could moderate themselves a bit. I don't know. I want to be careful what I say, but it's not. It's those of us been around a long time who maybe were trained not to show any humanity in the workforce, but that doesn't work anymore. I mean, whether it's all the technology that's brought work life together, 24/7, and of course, COVID just squished it, right? I mean, there you go.
Right.
So people are saying, okay, it's blurred. So I want to know the person I'm working with is a person.
Sure.
Well,
I think all of what you share is about humanizing the leader. Like, just be more human.
Well, the leader and the people with whom they're working.
And the people
they're not just, you're not a podcast host or a CEO of a company you started up. You're Ray. You got a name. You're not in my world, a first-year consultant. No, it's Jim. Now I got to know they're first-year consultant, but it's Jim.
Right.
It's
sure. Ray for the first couple of years of this show had me call him Mr. Wong, but yes. Now
there you go.
Now we're on first name basis.
He humanized itself.
Oh my.
Yeah, I don't want to go with that one.
No, he didn't. He did. He's the most generous
didn't believe
CEO
you.
I
I
know.
didn't
He's the
believe
most.
you.
But Joe, part of generosity in my mind is sponsorship. Like I've had great mentors in my career, but as far as my career trajectory, it was the sponsors, the people that put their political and social capital on the line to put me in front of the executive team, to get me the resources I need, to give me the safe space to experience. And in your book, you talk about allies. Is there, when you talk about allies, how close is being a sponsor or?
Yeah. You broke up a bit, or did I break up? Can you hear me? Let me just ask.
Yes. Is being a sponsor automatically make you an ally?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, we could blur sponsor, ally, and mentor if we want, right? I mean, I think ally, it's really taking somebody who probably is coming from a less privileged situation,
Okay.
or whatever. But it doesn't matter in the acts. I mean, I think when you talk about really being an action ally or a sponsor, you said it, or a real mentor, what everybody wants is, you just said it, give me a chance to be in the game, give me a chance to perform.
Right.
Don't do it for me when I walk through the door. Give me a chance to walk through the door. Don't do it for me when I walk through, then I got to do it. You still coach me. All our mentors coach, and give me your top coaching, please. But I don't want you to do it. And then, very importantly, if it's not going so well, don't run away. And there's too many times where you mentor someone, or you sponsor them, and they wobble, and all of a sudden it's not your fault. That's not a very generous leader. And they really want to have their own shot at it. I mean, it's what you wanted. You wanted the sponsor to give you a shot.
Yeah.
If you didn't deliver, that's your problem.
Just give me an at bat. That's all I wanted. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the only difference when you use the word ally does actually mean something specific, is just like inclusion. That is, there are groups of people in our work world who may not have these same shots necessarily.
That's right.
We can argue about that. I believe it's others. I had a discussion with one group who didn't believe me, but that's okay. So.
Well, I mean, leadership is dynamic. Leadership will change, right? There's a level of, being, transparent. There's a level of being transformational that changes your thing. Let's talk about some interesting times. I mean, you were a leader at BCG in the middle of like some chaotic areas, .com boom, 9/11, war in Iraq, the 2008 crash, the last epidemic or pandemic. Right. So I don't know. These techniques work.
Yeah. Actually, I would think I'll just, use two stories to pick on too, that of all the stuff that I remember. For me, one was 9/11. I was in our Washington office, and, we could see the Pentagon, the smoke coming, and people were freaking out, of course. And, it was almost like Chicken Little, the sky's falling. And it was kind of funny. We made a counter. So, that the leadership, me and one other guy, we made a decision to actually lock the doors. It was interesting, but because people had lost, some just were losing their mind. It was almost like they'll run out in the middle of the street and a car might hit them. I mean, not really, but I got to get to my kids. Where am I? It was just like this hysteria. And so, there is a generous leader is also someone who's going to be tough when the tough times require, immediately being empathetic to where they are, understand what they're going through, but also making clear and firm decisions. And then, of course, we opened the door. But it was kind of counterintuitive at first, but you really had to think about, where are they now? What's their experience? What's in their head? COVID is a more important one because, that was different for all of us, right? I mean, nobody knew the answers to anything. So by definition, you could be vulnerable and I do not know. That was a given. And you see so many speeches from great leaders who, like Arnie Sorensen in that video, the Marriott CEO, very famous video, and he's unfortunately also dying of cancer, but saying, I don't know. But some things that really drove home to me, the power of communications. People wanted to connect. I'm not sure what it was like where you guys worked, but everyone, we did big town halls, 5,000 people would join, whereas normally, what do you get on a Zoom meeting? People did need to see authenticity and vulnerability. I mean, when any leader displayed a bit of that, it just calmed everyone down and allowed people to release their fears. You really needed to listen to everybody else. And what do they know that I don't know? Because you didn't know. So it's pretty interesting case study. And you see, I mentioned Arnie. Scott Kirby told me he went out there and said to his whole team, I don't know when the plane's going to fly again. And all his advisors, you can't tell them that. You can't be unsure. You're the CEO. said, well, I don't know when they're going to flag him. What do you want me to tell them? You know, they don't know when they're going to work again. So I think that was actually a very fascinating time where these type of leadership skills were really required. You know, tough guy couldn't win that game because
Joe. Yeah. You know, my final question to you, and it may be a strange question. Yeah, maybe all of them have been strange, but this one, when I'm thinking about generous leadership, I think about the last few people I unfortunately had to fire as a people manager. And as we were thinking, and as I'm going through my Rolodex, I didn't feel they were generous leaders. They were demanding excellence, but they weren't developing excellence. They were very authoritative. They were command and control. They were jerks. In a couple of instances, I just found evidence of this is not how you treat people. Now, they were super smart. They wouldn't get to, you know, we were in a private equity world, and, you couldn't hide. Mediocrity couldn't hide. So these were folks that drove results, no question. But the last few I had to let go. It was not their IQ, it was their EQ. So my question to you is, can you teach generosity?
Yeah. You know, I was asked this yesterday by some staff members in conversation, and I kind of had to say a yes and no, because somewhere at the core of those people, I'm not so sure. You know, I'm not going to lie to you. You know, if they've got something stuck in their head. Now, can you teach or demand some of the generous traits? Right? Yes. No, I expect you to do small acts. I expect you to really develop your people by recognizing them, understanding their strengths. And if you don't do this, I will take you out of your job, which is what you did. You know, I'll expect you to role model listening. I don't expect you to be highly vulnerable. That's never going to work for you. But maybe tell somebody that you have a child. You know, that's a little bit of vulnerability for some people.
There's a soccer game this weekend.
Right. Yeah, do this. So, you know, I'm sure there's studies psychological studies that would answer yours of that question you asked. But, you know, I had a book coach help me, and she goes, Joe, the problem is that those who don't believe and don't want to believe will never pick up your book. So there are probably some. Now, if in a work environment, though, someone's working for you, I think you can demand different pieces from people.
You're very surgical in your book. I mean,
well, that's the way I think.
No. It's very precise, and all of your recommendations, to be honest, I mean, they appear to be common sense, doable. You don't have to, no calculus to. It seems like they're based on first principles, and they're common sense, and they're doable. Like you said, you can watch this podcast and you still have 2 hours in the afternoon to implement some of these. Yeah. Like a thank you note to one of your teammates to say, your work matters. We appreciate you. 1 minute. Anyone watching, if you're a people manager, end the week strong. Gratitude is a force multiplier.
Right. And the important point of that is it only has to be 2 sentences. Some people sweat over the damn email and paragraph. No, hey, I really love the work you did this week. Thanks for being here.
That's it, Joe.
You get that? Someone's going to love their Friday.
That's it. I'm going to send a note to Ray. An hour from now, I'm sending a note to Ray. Ray, you're my favorite co-host.
Sadly,
and I mean it. Mr. Wong, I mean it.
Mr. Wong.
We are here with Joe Davis
on Fridays.
This is the best. Yeah, we love this. We'll see you back in the green belt. We're with Joe Davis, Managing Director and Senior Partner at the Boston Consulting Group, otherwise known as BCG, and the author of The Generous Leader, a book you need to check out. You know, and I think it's a very, very important book. It's great in leadership coaching, and definitely something you should.
We all need to be generous leaders. Thank you, Joe.
Yes, let's all be generous leaders.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, here we go.
I wonder how many people actually think that you asked me to call you Dr. Wong. For those of you watching, he didn't. And I need to be super generous to him, because he is going to replace me with some tuned small language model any day.
No, you and I are going to go create the most ultimate bots who are going to bot out each other. So like the battle of the bots, will do machine to machine. They'll play our roles. We're going to ingest 364 episodes at DisrupTV and see what our avatars look like.
Ray, we have almost 1,300 interviews. There's so many books from folks like Joe. Some of you may not know, we had 70 authors on our show last year. And we're on pace to have 70 authors this year. So in 2 years, 140 authors, many of them best-selling authors. So the amount of knowledge that's captured in an hour discussion over the last 8 years. At some point, we'll capture all of that and share it with you. Now, here's something we're going to do that's super, super cool. Next week, because of holiday, Memorial Day, we don't have a show. We don't expect CXOs and best-selling authors to come on holiday weekends and spend their time with us. Although I bet if you asked, they would come. It's mostly because Ray and I want to take some time off. But the following week, we have an amazing in-person episode. Mr. Wong is flying all the way to Boston. Why would Ray come to Boston? Well, it turns out in the history of Boston, the 4 professional teams in Boston have won a total of 38 championships. 38. The Red Sox, the Celtics, the Bruins, and the Patriots. And now, of course, we have the 5th pro team, the Revolution, the soccer team. Well, we've invited the CIOs, CTOs, the top technology leaders of the 5 pro Boston teams. These teams have won 12 championships in the 21st century. This is why Boston's called the City of Champions. Sorry for all of you listening outside of Boston, but it's a fact. So the CIO, CTO of the Red Sox, the Bruins, the Patriots, the Celtics, and the Revolution are all meeting for the first time ever under the roof. We're actually going to be at the Celtics headquarters. So we might see the Larry Bird conference room and see the 17 trophies that the Celtics have. We chose the Celtics to host the event because they have the most championships. Of the 38 championships, the Celtics have 17. And the Celtics right now are the favorite to win the 18th championship this year. They're in the Eastern Conference Finals, waiting to see either the Knicks or the Pacers. Anyway, enough about Boston. Although we're going to be privileged to be in person with these folks. You're going to see some championship rings live that are the size of my head. For those of you who have never seen pro team championship rings. Please tune in May 29th. It's most likely between 11 to 12. We haven't locked the exact hour because some of these CIOs are actually in playoffs. So it's very fluid, but it is the 29th, and it is going to be most likely midday at noon. We're going to have either the beginning or the end of our 1 hour in-person podcast. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions of these CIOs, so please tune in on X and LinkedIn. And we'll have more on X and LinkedIn to talk about this amazing first time ever 5 pro teams represented. And we're going to talk about impact of AI on the fan experience. And it turns out, as we talk to these incredible pro team leaders, how they think about artificial intelligence to improve the experience for fans is exactly what every business needs to do to improve their customer experience, their employee experience, their business product experience. So that Venn diagram has a massive overlap. Ray, comments on the upcoming episode and a recap of what we just learned today.
Well, I'm really excited. These are some of the top sports CIOs, and they are in Boston. We got Michael Israel, John Carley, Brian Shield, Jay Westland, and more. And I think it's important to really learn from them because they are very, very different teams, different levels of maturity in terms of dynamics on the fan experience side, but more importantly, in terms of their adoptions of technologies. They have different challenges. And, we think these sports teams have massive tech budgets. The short answer is no. They're actually just as frugal and value-oriented as everyone else. So we're going to see some interesting insights there. Today, we had an amazing episode. I think one of the top issues everyone's facing is cybersecurity. And I think the area that, we have a good understanding on is really, we got to test our systems and we have to test them often. And I think that, the pen test report actually showed us, what some of those issues are. Keep your systems upgraded, keep your systems backed up. Because that's the fastest way to get back online to make sure everything's okay. Make sure those backup systems actually do work. A lot of people do backups without understanding what they would have to do. And one of the things that we talked about today here in Las Vegas, the Healthcare Transformation Summit, is really the importance of being able to think about what happens post-breach, right? What are your comm strategy? What's your security strategy? How do you get things back up and running? How do you take care of your customers, suppliers, partners, employees along the way? And then, of course, leadership is important. We always have lots of people we bring in that have written books about leadership, that are seen as leadership experts in their space. No better than Joe. Joe's been one of the people leading at BCG for quite some time, and really sharing the BCG approach and what he's done personally, I think was very, very helpful. The whole point of being generous. Yeah, I mean, that whole point of being generous across the board is not something that is easy to replicate. And I think it's something that you build into your culture over time because, whether you're trying to figure out how to, do it with a personal touch, or you're trying to listen deeper, or you're trying to include lots of folks or stand up for folks, that's all important, right? But you need recognition and feedback. You need the ability to create opportunities for people so they feel that impact. And more importantly, start with yourself. Start with yourself, be vulnerable, and move forward. I think that's what Joe would have said. So,
absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, hey, it's Friday. So
if it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Again, no show next week. On the 29th, I'm going to say this, I hope I don't regret it. On the 29th, Ray and I, around 9 in the morning, we're going to be at the Celtics headquarters for a midday show. If you happen to be in Boston, want to come say hello, come say hello. That's where we're going to be. May
text
29th. Us. Yeah, text us for sure. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in almost 2 weeks. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.